That's
I know.
Yeah.
So I need.
I'm just saying today.
I'm gonna leave. Oh, I had sent that on the voicemail. I'm gonna email her and see if she still has her password. She still knows.
I have,
Otherwise,
we have the same phones at work. I have the directions for all the other commands. It's the same, it may have, let me check.
Go ahead and get started. We have a full agenda. No, is that yours? Oh, this is yours. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting of the Shutesbury Selectboard to order. Today is Tuesday, May 6th, 2025. And then Melissa has to do something here. And this meeting is a hybrid meeting and it is being recorded. So as usual, I'm going to start off by reviewing the agenda. The first item on the agenda is public comment. After that, we have two sets of minutes from April 22nd and April 30th. We might move a couple of things around depending on if Matt Horowitz is going to get here. We had him first giving an update, Lake Wyola Boating and Safety Committee. Then discussion of using CPA funds for shared housing coordinator. Chief Burgess is here to address a letter of compliment received by an officer. Discussion of security cameras for the town hall. Then we have two assessors articles for the town meeting warrant. And we need to vote on the percentage for Article 2. Discussion of the administrative assessor position. Then review of the town meeting warrant draft. Discuss emergency management director's request to engage Bill Gilmore for the Massachusetts Firewise program. And then at 6 o'clock, we will meet with the finance committee to review the budget for town meeting. And after that, town administrator report. So what I'd like to do is move a couple of things around. We don't have Matt here. And let maybe Kristen, well, first let's do the minutes. So we'll start there. So do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of April 22nd, 2025?
Yes, yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Thank you, Sonia. Aye.
Stop.
Carol, aye. And do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of April 30th, 2025?
So,
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
thank you, Sonia. Aye.
Dr.
Carol, aye. Okay, so no Matt. Kristen, do you want to go ahead and
Sure.
address the select board?
Sure. So my style of management with my officers is I always like to appreciate and thank them to their faces when I get compliments from town residents and people from outside of the town. But when I feel they've gone above and beyond, I like to also bring it to the public's attention and your attention as well. So if you'll just let me read this quick letter. So this letter was dated March 24th, 2025. Dear Chief Burgess, I work for a little police department in Newbury, New Hampshire. My husband and I were traveling in your area on Friday, March 21st, 2025, while looking for an establishment that had bathroom facilities after a 2-hour drive. We can all giggle there. We saw an officer in his vehicle on the side of the road, inquiring of any local establishments. Your officer advised us that there's really nothing close to the area, but he would be happy to let us use the town facilities. Well, it was most appreciated, and it was very nice to see an officer with friendly, happy, helpful attitude. If you would please be so kind to give him this recognition coin. He did get something we call a trading coin. It would be appreciated. And if he's ever up in Lake Sunapee area, please stop by in our little police department. So when I received this letter in the mail, I then asked Officer McGuire, who was the officer, to come into the office, and I said, did you help somebody recently and allow them to use the facilities? He said, yes, I did. I said, great job, as that is something that we all would do. I said, did you know that the person that you helped was the administrative assistant to the police chief? He said, no, I had no idea who they were, which makes it that much better for me. And I know that he would do this for anyone. So I just wanted to say, knowing our town the way we do, and that there really isn't anything close by, you know, going out of his way to say, follow me, I'll find you a place to use facilities. So that's what I wanted to bring to his attention. So I will be placing this in personnel file as well.
Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you.
So do we want to just have a quick discussion since Kristen is here about the security cameras?
Yes.
Sure, okay, why don't we do that, Kristen? We'll go ahead.
Okay.
So I had just, I think when we met last week, Kristen mentioned that we were gonna be getting security cameras for, the highway department.
Correct.
And the town hall, both, in the case of the town hall, both exterior and interior, security cameras. So I was surprised, because I hadn't, heard about that. I knew that we had them at the elementary school.
I was surprised you were surprised.
That's the way it goes sometimes. So I felt it was appropriate for the select board, given our, oversight of, municipal buildings, to just talk about the security cameras. And I did a little bit of research, and I thought, you know, what would be good, is if we were to come up with a policy, because a lot of institutions, municipalities actually have a policy about security cameras. And particularly when you are putting security cameras inside of a building, I think we're all kind of getting used to the fact that there are cameras on the outside of a lot of buildings, but once they're inside a building, it's can be a little bit more sensitive. And I know that that there are regulations regarding, you know, private places, so you can't have them in bathrooms and some other. But I felt like we as a board should come up with any questions, you know, we have. And I had forwarded to Kristen a couple of things that I found online. Just, you know, one was a relatively brief policy. It was for, you know, a library, which I actually sent to Mary Ann too, because I did the same thing holds, you know, in other buildings that, you know, if an issue comes up, we should have an answer. Somebody says, I'm being filmed, or, you know, what's the, why are you having these cameras? And just to be, you know, able to answer those questions. So I wanted to just put that out there and see if you guys had any questions and how we move forward.
Yeah, sort of sample policy.
Yeah, but I didn't want to bring it tonight because I thought we really didn't have time. So I guess, you know, what I could do is circulate. So I found two things. One was actually a policy, and then the other was a template, you know, that asks the questions that you might want to answer. So well, no, it's more questions about, you know, what is the policy? I mean, one of the things is, you know, what is public? Who has access to the tapes? Will there be audio, which Kristen has said, no, there's no audio, it's just video. But who's the caretaker? When does it get downloaded? How long does information get kept? Where are those cameras going to get put? All of those things that I think, you know, should be explained before we go the installation. And particularly for any internal cameras that all staff within the town hall have an opportunity to, to just, you know, voice if there are any concerns about the placement of cameras.
Sounds like a good plan. Where's how do we implement?
Well, yeah, I guess what I can do is I can, you know, I'll send what I sent to Kristen. And then maybe at the next meeting, or I guess we could feed stuff back to you, the select board members, because we can't do it amongst ourselves.
I know, not to jump too far ahead, but we did have department head meeting today. I can tell you that the general consensus is, yes, we would like cameras.
Okay.
And
Interior and exterior,
yes,
okay,
a lot of people had some safety concerns, which, having worked in a non-videoed community building, I can definitely echo. I think they're a good idea. But I'd be happy to, feed some information to them to get more specific comments if you'd like.
yeah, okay, so why don't I will circulate what I sent to Krista, and then maybe we'll just address it at the next meeting. As I understand it, the cameras have already been purchased, right? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
they've been purchased. I got the green light from Gabe, before she finished on her stay here. And, they are sitting and awaiting decisions.
Okay. All right, good. So we'll do this at meeting. Our next meeting is, our next regularly scheduled meeting is in a couple of weeks, the 20th. Yeah. So either the 20th or the one after that, depending upon, 20th is right before town meeting, so hopefully everything will be all set.
I just texted him.
Okay, all right, great. Okay, so Mateo is here. Matt Borowitz is not here.
yet.
So Mateo, we will move on to you to talk about using the Shutesbury CPA fund for a shared housing coordinator.
Yes, so thank you for the opportunity to talk about this. And obviously, given Rita's professional,
Past professional.
hopefully she can correct me when I misspeak. Sure won't happen. So I'm here to address the board in my capacity as the chair of the CPC. I thought it would be useful first to provide a little context about why I wanted to address you and then talk a bit about what I'm hoping the select board will do. So in 2024, the median sales price for a single family home in Shutesbury was $475,000. In 2010, it was $235,000. In 2000, it was $157,000. So between 2000 and 2024, the median sales price for a single family home in Shutesbury has increased by over 200%. The median household income in town is $80,327, which means that if somebody earning the median income has decent credit and puts, let's say, 10% down to buy a house, their mortgage would be $3,200 per month to live in Shutesbury. That's about 50% of their monthly pay going to housing. And things are, of course, worse for renters who typically earn less than the median, because the average rental rate for a single family home in Shutesbuary in 2024 was $3,750. The last time Shutesbury developed a master plan, about 20 years ago in 2004, when the median home price was $162,000. The master plan stated, and I quote, "Housing in Shutesbury is presently affordable for most residents." I think that the numbers make it clear that this is no longer the case. So there's only so much the town can do, right? There are some things that can be done through zoning bylaws, the accessory dwelling units amendment, tiny houses amendment that the planning board are putting forward, or some options for that. And of course, the Community Preservation Act is another tool that we have, but the resources for the CPA are limited. So section 6 of the CPA says that we have to set aside 10% of our CPA revenue every year for community housing needs. We don't need to spend 10% every year. We just need to set it aside. And it's a good thing we don't need to spend it, because it would be impossible to do that without wasting that money. 10% of our CPA revenue this year is $7,300. Not going to go very far for affordable housing purposes. At the start of FY26, we'll probably have about $63,000 in the community housing account, $63,000. And again, the median sales price for a home in Shutesbury is $475,000. So there's not a lot we can do on the whole supply side of that equation. So the question is, how can we make some kind of positive impact to address the affordability crisis in Shutesbury? So there are two things, that I'm gonna sort of suggest, and leave it to you guys to mull over. The select board could ask town meeting, not this year, obviously, to appropriate CPA funds from the housing account, and the undesignated account to create an affordable housing trust fund, and they could set up an affordable housing committee to administer that fund. This is what Leverett does in some other towns as well. And the trust fund could be used for a range of affordability programs, so down payment assistance, rental assistance, those kinds of things. It would generate, like all trust funds, it would generate income through interest. It would also be supplemented with CPA money every year or every few years, and there could be other sources of funding for it, grants, state funding, and such. The advantage of doing this is that by having an affordable housing committee and a separate trust fund, you wouldn't have to wait for annual town meeting, go through the CPA process necessarily to use that funding. The committee could sort of have a little more nimble use of it over the year. The second thing, and this was sort of brought to the CBC and brought to me by Leverett, is the select board could ask town meeting to appropriate CPA funds to partner with Leverett. They are currently working to hire a designated affordable housing coordinator through FERCog. And to make it financially feasible for them, they are hoping that other towns in the area will partner. I printed out my allowed hands.
Sure.
This is from Barbara Carulli. These are her notes about some of the things that the coordinator might do. But essentially, they would identify and apply for grant opportunities or grants legislation. They would advise the town on affordability issues and ideas, and then they would manage any affordability programs that we set up. Hiring through FERCog rather than doing it ourselves would mean that the town would really have to handle HR things like office space, payroll. And, you know, the select board could fund this through a multi-year CPA grant, because that would be more likely to retain, I think, good talent in that position. I should note that these are not mutually exclusive options, right? You could set up the trust in a committee and then let the committee take responsibility for dealing with hiring an affordable housing coordinator. And then the coordinator could in turn be responsible for advising the committee on how to administer the trust. And then there are other options too. If the town is not yet ready to act on this, you could set up a task force like the Stormwater Ocean Task Force to do some more research and provide some more potential solutions or options forward. But I think the important thing is that we use something to address the skyrocketing cost of living in town, because there are, I'm sure, lots of people who love to live in Shutesbury who just can't afford to. So that's what I'm putting on your plate. The reason I didn't want the CBC to be addressing this is because it's not really in our purview. It's not really our purview.
Comments from the select board?
Well, one question I have is just, you said we have $63,000, is that what you're saying in the?
In the community housing portion, yeah. We've only once spent community housing funding.
So essentially, that's what would establish this trust fund, that's 62,000?
So we would start with that or a portion of that, and then also to make it meaningful, I would also suggest moving some funds out of the undesignated account. Those are funds that can be used for any.
Oh, I get you, right.
Not all of those funds.
Yeah, I was gonna say 63,000, but it doesn't really solve the problem, is we're all there. It sort of seems like, why would you set it? I mean, my question, I guess the general question would be, why would you set up a trust fund for $63,000?
Well,
But I'm not saying it's necessarily bad either, but what's the logic?
I think the idea is to start it and to keep adding to it each year, and at some point it's going to start being a lot more useful to drawn than if the money just sits in our CPA account where it's not doing anything. You know, it was 10 years after the town adopted the Community Preservation Act before it had enough money to do anything at all in community housing, and that was one thing, to buy property for the Habitat for Humanity House in 2018, which is great. That helps one family, and it doesn't really solve the supply problem. So in my view, it's better to help a lot of people a little bit with the funds we have, rather than wait 10 years, help one family, wait 10 years, help another family. Because given the rate at which how home prices are increasing, you know, as I said, 200% last, you know, 20 years, that waiting 10 years is going to make it even harder to use the little amount of money that they have. You know, Leverett's in a totally different position. They have $1.5 million in CPA funding. They get a ridiculous amount of matching funding from the state. But, you know, we don't have those CPA resources.
Why do they have so much money? I'm just curious if you know why do they have so?
I mean, really, probably,
I think
they
they,
start,
I think they tax it at a higher percent. They might be at the maximum. We do 1.5%,
Yeah,
and they're probably at 3%.
And
So, and they started earlier.
yeah, they're part of a group of communities that, because they were like the first generation of their CPA.
yeah, they get big marks.
The state gives them a tremendous percentage match.
Right,
And because of 3%, they get matching funds 3 times, and we only get once.
right,
And their tax rate is affected by the other, where it was.
right.
That doesn't really affect the CPA.
Only the percent.
Yeah. Just a percentage, yeah. Melissa?
Those are all 3 good options. So I think we have to explore them, right? And think about them.
Yeah, you know, I like the idea are there any other communities other than Leverett that,
I can
Might
ask
be a
Barbara, but
possibility.
last time I talked to her, she didn't mention any others. I mean, there are also only so many CPA communities around us,
right,
but. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it only makes sense if it's through Fort Rock, it has to be a Franklin County town.
Right.
And, you know, it only makes sense in a town that is similar to Leverett, Shutesbury, and being kind of limited in resources.
Right.
And high.
So my question is, so is Lebanon sort of a standout town? Must be, I assume, that there must be more towns that are like us in Franklin County, let's say, that have $63,000 or whatever it is. And fewer of them have $1.5 million. Isn't that true? Is that true? Must be.
I mean, I would think so. I don't know the history of when different towns around here adopted the CPA. The Community Preservation Coalition website does have, you can see which towns are at 3% and which towns like us are at 1.5. That tends to be a good indication of which ones are flush with CPA money and which ones have just enough to do, you know, a few things here and there. But yeah, I don't know, I haven't talked to Barbara about this in several weeks, so I don't know what other towns she's pursued. Leverett is also a step ahead of us in that they already have an affordable housing trust and an affordable housing committee. It was a very popular and successful thing when established, and it's been largely inactive over the last, I don't know, almost decade, maybe not a decade, but last at least 6 or 7 years. They haven't had much action. So they're looking for a way to use that.
I think it's certainly something that we could pursue. I was just looking at the map to see who else. So Sunderland, Whately, Deerfield, Conway, Shelburne are the other, Franklin County towns that have CPA. So it'd be great, I think, you know, just to defray some of the costs and in part because if there are similar problems, the person's not going to be doing necessarily something that couldn't apply to, you know, a few communities. The trust piece of this, like setting up a trust, so the trust takes, there's a town meeting vote to set up, I think it's in the statute. And the nice thing about a trust is that you can deposit like CPA funds with the trust, and Mateos, you said you can do it outside of the town meeting cycle. But it's also, the trust is also able to accept gifts. And so if, I know in the case of, I think it was the land trust in Amherst, maybe not the affordable housing trust, but like somebody donated a house. And if somebody who'd been really involved in work, so the trust can then take it, and then there doesn't have to be further appropriation. So the trust has a lot of powers.
I will say on the topic of other towns, Barbara did indicate that it would be preferable not to have this person spread too thin. Then ideally it would be maybe three
towns.
towns. I think that there would probably also be some challenges the person would face. They identify a grant opportunity and suddenly there's three towns that they're working for are all applying for a competitive grant. But
But sometimes they, regional grants are
Right.
actually encouraged, and there are benefits to doing something regionally.
And then the other thing on that is, if the different towns that want to hire this coordinator are contributing to that in different amounts, right? Leverett might have a lot of resources put towards it, we don't. That might then be reflected in how many hours we get that person, how many hours Leverett gets that person. It's certainly something we couldn't do on our own, which is why I think that doing it in the regional approach makes sense, if we.
I think a proportional charge would be a great idea. Well, but based on how much money you have, so if you have a lot of CPA money, your opportunities are gonna be that much greater, so. So how do we proceed then?
Well, I think we should. Well, we'll need to talk about these individual things and then find out the process if we're heading in this direction. The task force is always a good idea, but maybe not necessarily. I think we know that it's something we need, right?
So could we do like a meeting, just to see if there's interest, like a community meeting, and just say the board is thinking about this, and just to come together, and, we could, invite like Shelley Daring to present from the, Massachusetts Housing Partnership, a former colleague of mine who does work with trusts and on CPA. We haven't had any meeting with her, right? That public meeting? Yeah. That I think would be really helpful. She lives in Boston, so she'd probably just do it remotely, but, so maybe we could plan on that sometime in June.
That
And
sounds
then
good.
just like leave it open, have it open to the public, let Shelley talk about what some rural communities have done. I mean, there are examples, so. I can't remember, it's not Charlotte, there's some of those, kind of western hill towns that have done some small rental developments, so. But, as Mateo pointed out, it's really hard, it's very hard to do those, especially if you don't have any water and sewer infrastructure. But there are other things we could possibly do, so, all right,
Or maybe
thanks for tossing that ball in the dartboard.
maybe
Good job,
when we
Mateo.
have that community meeting, we invite this CPC and the FinCom to come in.
Yes,
I think it would also be good to, with the planning board.
yeah, and then maybe out of that, we can get a few volunteers who are willing to do the additional research. Without having to set up a, yeah. That makes sense. Okay. Okay, now Matt, yeah, huh?
No, he said, 5:35, he's traveling on a work, thing,
Oh,
so
okay.
he's double duty.
Okay, all right, thank you, Mateo. Stay tuned. All right, I'm just gonna keep an eye at the time. So the next item is we have two assessors articles for the town meeting warrant, and article number 2 requires a vote. And Leslie. Wow, George. April, George, who wants to give the presentation on this?
I can give one broad sweep,
Okay,
and that is in 2021, the town voted to give cost of living increases to the seniors and blind, not blind, just seniors exemptions. It was allowed by the law, and they did it. At that time, there was no statute to include veterans in this. Now the veterans, as of August 24, the HERO Act came about. So technically, what you would be doing in the broad sweep is bringing veterans exemptions up to what the seniors are getting. There's tons of information that I can email you guys, folks, if you have plenty of time to read.
I don't know.
Various towns, I checked the assessor's website today, and various towns are approaching it in different ways. Concord avoided this cost of living chart, which, believe me, is gonna be a little extra task each year, but they just said we'll double everything and get that cost of living. The assessors voted at their April 16th meeting to recommend it to the select board, and they actually even voted a recommendation of 100%. That for the, we have read the details, and we recommended 100% of the, on 22J. Yes. Veterans amounts to increase not to exceed 100%. Increases all veteran exemption amounts by up to the percentage, not to exceed 100%.
Okay. So Article 1 adopts, adds the veterans, is that correct? And Article 2 is about the percentage.
Yeah, plus 22I increases all veteran exemption amounts annually by the court. That's determined by DOR. And we're already doing that for seniors.
Okay,
22J, increases all veteran exemption amounts by up to a percentage not to exceed 100%, as voted by the legislative body for July 1. And that would apply until town meeting decided to change it again.
Okay. So once established, it would stay until we changed it, or,
Correct. Until we brought it back to town meeting. It's not like the lease of whenever you vote for the percentage every year.
right, okay.
And that amount can be changed at town meeting, so we should amend the article and change it.
So Leslie, is there sort of a layperson's explanation of Article 1, Article 2? Is there something that the assessors have? I mean, because there's so much like
Complex.
clause 22, 22A, 22, I mean, nobody's gonna know what this is. But if somebody says, this is what this article does.
Yes.
This article adds veterans.
David Burgess, volunteered to come to town meeting to do that. He was supposed to be here tonight.
Okay, all right, no, that's all right. I think more, typically at town meeting, we have handouts. I was talking to Brennan about this, and I don't know if it makes sense to have, something just like giving a paragraph or a couple of sentences, because this is like way complex. What is it gonna do? So, and then Article 2, I assume the recommendation is to go up to 100%? Is that what you guys said?
Yes.
And on average, how much money is that? Did I see like $400 and this?
Well, yeah, exemptions are there. Yeah, the basic one is $400.
Okay,
And then it goes up, and people also let it on, like nonprofit. If you're 100% disabled due to the doctor saying you are, died, it's.
okay, so
it's
there's
not
a
easy
range.
to
I see.
explain.
Is that the thing that you were referencing that Concord had? That the town of Concord?
Congress was speaking specifically about these two new options, 22I and J.
Yeah.
And I didn't print out the response of someone speaking. 22I and 22J are local options, so there will be no additional state reimbursement. The state does partially reimburse all of these options. David Burgess created a spreadsheet, he created a chart where he advised the assessors as to how much he thought it would cost the town this first year. And veterans, the number of veterans in our town doesn't change significantly, and that came out to 4,000 in numbers.
Yeah, and this is funded through the overlay, so that we know direct impact. on
Oh,
taxpayers.
okay.
There's adequate funds in the overlay. We overlay is 40,000 and we never.
Right, okay, so that would be great too.
No,
Great, just to explain, or I don't know, maybe there's just like a Q and A, like 4 or 5 questions, like,
And
what do these two
so
articles
new,
do?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but we
yeah.
could create something.
okay, yeah, I think just for town meeting, that it would be good to.
It just overwhelms me,
Yeah,
but that's why I say the broad sweep, it's just that we've already done this for seniors.
right,
There was no avenue to do it for veterans at the time.
okay, all right, yeah,
Yes,
I'm good, are you in support?
I am.
Yeah,
Yeah,
all right,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, that works. So, are these on the warrant, right, on the draft warrant right now?
Brian.
Right,
But
okay.
I apologize.
No.
Brennan.
Brennan was fine, okay, great, and just didn't have the percentage, right? It
Yes.
Didn't have that, okay. All right, so, typically what we do is we vote all the articles, like when we do the whole warrant. But we can just take this up because it sounds like you need Article 2 percentage. So, do I hear a motion to approve, it's not really it's the first article as presented by the assessors to so move.
Yeah.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Make peace on your eye.
Dr.
Karen, aye. Article 2, is there a motion about the percentage, in clause 22J? It's funny because it said, I thought it says here in clause 22F.
Oh, well,
Yeah, it's not
F
complicated.
is,
Of the personal. Oh, subject to the conditions in clause 22J. Okay,
believe me, that is why you.
it's so, no, I know.
Administrative assessment.
Yeah, right.
And that is why we need just, a really simple explanation. Okay, does somebody want to make a motion about the percentage?
So I'll make a motion for Article 2 presented by the Board of Assessors and Assessors Office that we, approve 100% for that article.
Is
Second,
there a second?
second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Take peace on your eye.
Dr.
Carol, aye. Thank you, thanks for,
Attempting that.
thanks for offering to do like a,
Can I would give this document to
Brennan.
Brennan,
yeah,
if he wanted to kind of keep up your vote. This might, I'm just reading here, this
Background?
came from, yeah.
okay, yeah, I mean, we could just,
Divisional.
okay, all right, we could just have that as something that was referenced during the meeting. Doesn't
Yes,
give that to
it
Brennan?
should be, because
Okay.
it says they have to pay at least 10% of their tax. And it's more detailed,
Okay,
everything's more detailed.
okay. And just for those folks who are here, I know, Brendan, did you, come up with a deadline for people who want to submit handouts for town meeting? Have you done that yet, or that?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes, I have not made a deadline yet, but of course, sooner rather than later, would be beneficial, but, we still have a good week or two before we're gonna start printing, so.
okay,
I'll create something and then have David review it the next time he's in, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Or to our in session.
Maybe just set up that deadline right now.
okay. Oh, AJ.
Oh.
You couldn't get in?
No.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, thank you. All right, order. Thank you, Leslie, for, the
Matt is
information.
here now.
Okay, so Matt Borowitz has, joined us. And Matt is the chair of the Lake Wyola Boating and Safety Review Committee, and he is here to, hello, Matt, to give us.
Hey, how are you?
On where things are with the committee.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good to see you guys. Thanks for accommodating my schedule here. I'm in and out of meetings here in the Big Apple, so thank you. So what I want to do is just provide an update from the last time that we talked. Post the public meeting that we had, we took back some updates, and there's a proposal and there's discussion being had, and a motion on the floor within our committee to do some amended work to the bylaws. So some updates, some tweaking, and then also including a couple of new things that I think accommodated a lot of the different viewpoints that were heard from not only people who sent in letters, but also people who were there present. And we've been in discussion on that. I'd say our committee is still, trying to find ways to come to some consensus. I think we're going to try to finish up our discussion tomorrow at our meeting tomorrow, and then have a vote on the amended bylaws that we've talked about. The committee as a whole, I think there's a strong push for more education. And I think there's a kind of a consensus, at least amongst some of the folks on the committee, that we'd like to get something solidified sooner rather than later, with the idea that we'd love to be able to do education this summer and not prolong it into a 2026 type of thing. And I'm not sure if you guys saw or not, but I had hopefully my lovely wife dropped off a couple of signs. And these are by no means are these the exact laws or anything like that, but it's a representation of the type of signage that I think we could potentially promote with the town, that really kind of indicates, what are our bylaws, what are the rules, what's some etiquette that's potentially wise for the lake, but also to these are the types of things that I think, visual, written, and also a visual pictorial view of the lake would offer a lot of guidance and a lot of, perspective for people that come to visit the lake, whether they're, residents on the lake, or if they're, visitors to the lake. We've talked a lot about we could put signage up at the boat ramp, at the beach, at the Lake Wyola clubhouse. We could send out flyers and laminated cards out to, lake residents. But I think, one of the major things that, I feel really strongly about is that if we want to reinforce behaviors and make people aware, signage is, education is going to be our number one proponent for that. I think you dovetail that with having some reinforcement on the lake with Shutesbury PD, and then the environmental police, whom I've spoke to, said that they're looking to, patrol the lake a little bit this summer as well. I think all that would really bode well. I think our committee is struggling a little bit on two different items. One is should we repeat mass boating laws in our actual bylaws? That's a question I was going to pose to you folks today, just what your thoughts were on that. And then the other thing was just around, any kind of time amendments for, usage on the lake. And I did a pretty comprehensive search on, 47 lakes that allow motorboats in Massachusetts, and there's 8 of them that do have some sorts of restrictions as far as time utilization, with the majority of those being a delayed start. So in one of the amended bylaws that we proposed, that's on the floor, is for motorboats not to go out till 8 a.m. Inclusively on the lake, to give people time to either swim and or paddle at a time that is super calm and flat, but at the same time accommodating for a lot of the multi-use recreational folks on the lake that like to go out early for weather reasons as well too. So I think that, the consensus is that we've been a multi-purpose lake for a long time. We're still we all want to be safe cohesively. And I think, we're trying to, wrestle that to ground right now and try to figure out where we stand on that. So that was kind of the update that we have. And I'd be curious on some of your thoughts on, should we reiterate mass boating laws in the bylaws specifically? And or do we just include them, like if you looked at the signage, including, mass boating laws in reference, so people know what some of those are as well. Some people say we should have it so that people don't have to cross-reference and look for it, which I can get behind that as well. But I was just curious on how, the select board looks at bylaws, and would they rather not have to restate laws that are already in effect? So it's kind of a quick and dirty update, but I'm open to any dialogue conversation.
How big are those, how big a document is that bylaw, mass voting bylaws?
But no, it's actually quite simple. If I'm available, if I'm allowed to share my screen, I could
Let me
actually show you.
1 second.
Share really quick. They're pretty synonymous to what's on the board that I shared with you, but again, those aren't official until we actually have a vote on it. So don't want
Go
to.
ahead. Sure now.
Is that okay, share. All right, share. So if you can see my screen here, move me out of the way.
Yeah, those are pretty simple, yeah.
So if I'm looking at what we have on the table today, that's on the motion, again, to be determined by our committee, still don't have consensus yet or a vote on this. I kind of have the existing on the left, on the right, I have the proposed bylaw revisions. So the main things that people typically will regulate on a lake is speed, its distance, its direction, and times. Those are pretty much what you typically will see if you look at, I've looked at, oh God, hundreds and hundreds of bylaws. Those are the main things that they look at. So mild tweaks, like on number 1, if we look at the top one here, I'm just adding paddle vessels to comply with all the mass boating laws and Coast Guard regulations. The time, 30 miles per hour still seems to be an appropriate speed for the lake and then we have 6 miles per hour versus the 5 miles per hour. Reason for that is that correlates to the mass boating law. Headway speed is defined as 6 miles per hour in their laws. And then the sunset to 8 a.m. is a 6 mile per hour, which means people can't go faster than headway speed or 6 miles per hour until after 8 a.m. in the morning. The limit, this is the distance, same as the other one. As before, I try to clean them up and say speed limit, distance, direction, try to simplify for people. We keep it a little more simpler. People are more apt to read it, understand it. The distance speed limit 6 miles per hour within 150 feet of shore. That's a Massachusetts boating law already. So that's an example of one that should we be reiterating these on bylaws or make reference to them in some sort of educational document or signage. Counterclockwise stays the same. Water skiing towable activities, that's again where we revised it to have a delayed start, which is somewhat synonymous with other lakes in the Commonwealth. And then we had to clean this one up. This one actually rebutted it made reference to state beaches, and that wasn't a true statement. So we recrafted that to only apply to Lake Wyola Association beaches or town beaches. How far away you have to stay away from shore, and if you cannot have motorized watercraft on those, they want just like canoes and kayaks to use the beaches. You can't go in there with a motorboat and dock it at the town beach. And then the swimmers, again, accompanied by a boat when beyond 150 feet. That's a great, best practice. Seen that a few times. And the other thing we added that I actually put at the top of the sign that you guys have there, just adding kind of an overall caveat of reckless or unsafe boating is prohibited, including speed, speeding near shorelines, swimmers or docks, boating under the influence, failing to maintain a proper lookout. I thought it'd be great just to kind of state in generalities in our bylaws that we don't want to have. We want people to be abiding by the laws and paying attention. That's kind of a catch-all, and that's something that we can discuss as well. So that's kind of how it looks. So the document gets, again, if you add in all of the other Massachusetts laws that would be kind of restated in our bylaws, it's probably be about 11 to 12 bullet items. So just giving you an idea that way. So I can stop sharing now.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. The only thing I have with reiterating the state laws, if they change it, right, and we won't know that. If referencing it is better and then having, so that's my only thing. If it gets changed without us knowing, and then we would have to either rewrite our bylaw or have someone watching it to know if it's changed.
Yeah.
That's.
And
you know.
I think that's what the reference to the Massachusetts and Coast Guard guidelines are listed as kind of like number one priority. But I do think, because I agree with some of my committee members that definitely by having that on signage, so people don't have to go look for the important ones, is I think an important item. Because people should know you can't get within 150 feet of a swimmer. You shouldn't be 150 feet from a dock or a swim platform. I mean, these are things that we could easily reference to in the on like signage or anything that we hand out.
I would agree. I think what you're saying is we just not. put in-
Reference it, yeah, just
Reference it
if
because
it changes,
That's what I was
right, 'cause
thinking.
we won't know.
Changing
Yeah.
aspect. of things. You know, redo all the signs or whatever. So
And
I guess, yeah, go ahead. I just think, yeah, referencing them is probably fine.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, some of the discussions that, we need a good foundation of education and enforcement before any kind of major radical decisions are made or construed on the lake. I think that's something that's, if there's if there's a need to do a different time schedule or something like that, I think a consultant and a time study would need to be required in order for us to really have conceptual data on that, because there's different perspectives from residents who live on the lake versus people who don't live on the lake versus everybody else. So there's a lot of, ambiguity of what's, could be factual or true versus conjecture. So to me, I think, making some movement and, cleaning up our bylaws, and then also, putting some guardrails out there, I think is a positive thing for the lake community as a whole, so that it remains this great multi-purpose use lake that we all love and enjoy, but people are more cognizant of, respectful of, what's going on the lake. And I think the education piece can really enhance that part.
Yeah, I just have a question, Matt, about whether or not there was any discussion about wake boats, just because that had come up as a problem, both, environmental problem as well as a, safety problem, that wake boats are, degrade the shore, stir up a lot of the, vegetation at the bottom of the lake.
Closet bacteria.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit. I can't recall when we talked about those probably early on in our committee discussions. There's a lot of different facts and discussion around wake boats in specific. The majority of the wake boat community, from what I've observed anyway, is that they stay towards the center of the lake. They don't tend to get closer to shore. And I think that by reinforcing our 150-foot distance requirement from shore will also help that as well too, versus having people coming in close to shore as well with the boats. We haven't gone for a specific boat category. We've advocated for a speed limit is what's been kind of the standard for Lake Wyola.
And other questions? So you said the committee is meeting tomorrow night. Are you gonna try to submit something for?
That's what I was gonna ask. That's what I was gonna ask you. I would, if we get to the point where we can, my goal is to have, we've had a meeting and a half already, very long meetings of discussion. So I think we're at a point where the discussion has probably hit its limits. So it's time for us to kind of, call for a vote on the amended bylaws. And then based on how that turns out, I'd like to be able to communicate to you guys this week, if we get to that point, with the proposed verbiage, which I showed you a few minutes ago.
Okay, so to get it onto the town meeting warrant for this.
Yeah, again, because if we can't really make signage or really kind of embark on an educational process without having something concrete, right? That's kind of where we'll be living in ambiguity for another season, if that's the case.
Okay, to get back to Brennan and our schedule, I know you were putting together a calendar, Brennan. What's the, what was the drop dead date on the warrant articles? Brennan, you there?
Might have stepped away.
Oh, okay, well,
It should be in by this week.
okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
It's 7 days before town meeting, it would be Saturday, so if we want to get it
Right.
done. The drop dead date is,
yeah. Okay, so if you have something for, town, for the warrant, then you should submit that language to us. So tonight we're reviewing the warrant. We haven't discussed whether or not we're gonna have another meeting before we finalize the warrant. I mean, we have another meeting on the 20th, but we wanna obviously have this, we have to get the warrant language to town council to review, who needs a few days, so, I'd say, yeah, this week. If you,
Yep.
an article, you should submit that to us.
Okay. I will do
All
my
right.
best to see
If
if
you
we
have
can garner some consensus.
questions about, format or warrant language, we should call.
Too bad.
Well, there is the one already on there for the planning board bylaw change, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that can be tweaked until
Yeah.
gives us some insight.
Yeah, just see what you can do with the language, because we would be, creating a new bylaw, or deleting whatever language we use about the existing bylaw, or are we amending it?
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Do the best you can, we will take it from there.
I will do my best.
How's that? Okay,
I will.
all right, good, thanks, Matt.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good one. Bye.
Okay, it is 6 o'clock. I just want to do one more thing and then we'll get to the finance committee. We're not gonna do the town meeting warrant draft right now, obviously. We'll be going through some of it, but I wanted to talk about the administrative assessor position, because I know that that's something we need to deal with immediately. It sounds like we might have this problem solved, that we might have somebody who, I'm looking at you, Leslie.
That the assessors is here, Howard Spetner, I would have him speak. I don't understand that it is done, and I do think we still need to advertise, but I thought you had them help.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. If you want to just give us an update on where things stand with the administrative assessment. Do you want us, are we going ahead and advertising, or do we have?
I don't think we need to advertise at this point. I think, right now, our situation is that we have an administrative assessor who is being paid $6,000 a year and works for something like 5 hours a week. I think, if that much. And then he does some of the work, and then we have a consultant, Lloyd Bishop. He does some other things for us. He looks at the assessments, he looks at sales, he matches them, he changes the assessments so that they line up with market value. That's once a year. He also values our utilities, that's part of personal property, also once a year. I think we're paying him, so Leslie, this is like $2,000 plus $500 per electric utility.
That's what the contract is that he sent for.
And the question is, how many electric utilities are there?
I believe for, but I can't tell you certainly.
Okay, but it's, in the neighborhood of 2,000 plus 2,000, give or take, okay? I spoke to Roy on the phone, and basically Roy is willing to take on all the work that David does for us now, okay? And he sent us a contract. The contract he sent us is the same contract as for last year, which is to say 2,000 plus, give or take 500 or 1,000. I'm not sure how accurate that really is, because I'm not sure he's factored in all the extra work that he's gonna have to do, okay? And I wanna firm that up with him, okay? but it's not gonna be anywhere near the $35,000 budgeted for the position, okay? And I think he's gonna be fine. Okay, that's my guess, okay? He's been working with David, he knows David well. They interact well together, the transition will be they've already started to talk about it, even though there's no contract. But there's no FY 26 contract, he's under contract now. I think we should just go with him, I think he's gonna be fine.
David Burgess is finishing, is his contract June 30th?
Yeah, his last day is June 30th, but my guess is, again, that David and Roy speak a lot, my guess is, David's gonna keep working, just not for us.
Beyond June 30th, or so would we start with Roy Bishop now, or?
Well, we do have him, I mean.
We have him anyway, right, but him
Anyway.
taking on David's
And he's just,
responsibility.
He'll start to look at what he has to do, he'll talk to David. David will probably be available for, phone calls after June 30th.
Okay, so just doing a, having some overlap,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, some, yeah.
Okay, questions?
So that's been solved, we're done, right?
Well, yes, the question is whether or not we feel like we need to go through, I mean, the job description it's good to have a job description,
We
right?
should vote on the
So
job description.
should vote on the job description, it's whether or not we need to go through we need to advertise, right? Leslie?
I would just say that, the Sussex Board as a whole has not discussed what Howard spoke of with Roy Bishop. And it's my personal feeling that there are things that are not happening. We have been fortunate to have David Burgess all the time, give us 5 hours a week. That is not getting the work done in the office that needs to be done. It's been leaning on me that I am not qualified to do it. That doesn't include the backlog of property inspections that sadly I went through the role of a assessor Zoom program 2 weeks ago and was feeling pretty down about not being able to accomplish the things I want to. I don't know how we fare compared to the rest of the world. I know it's changing. I know that my brain is going downhill. I can put down a paper and where did I put it kind of thing. So I know all of us experience that, but to be depending on me for office hours to do what an administrative assessor at 20 hours a week was doing until this last 3 years, which included COVID. And I hate to be saying this without having a meeting with everybody first. It's not right. It's my strong feeling that I'm not going to last forever. Roy did mention that his wife will be retiring in January. His contract says we'll have this all done and you should be all set till December 3rd. That's what the cover letter said. It did not say that we can continue running this way. It's not right. Our values are not supposed to just be drive by that house still there, that house still there. There are sheds going up. There's lots of things happening that are not being vetted for. But this is something to the board of assessors to you folks. So don't throw away that job description. Don't throw away the advertisement. I would love to see the advertisement and the job description go out so that we might capture Roy's wife, Diane, who I'm told through multiple people, including Howard, is excellent. You are going to need somebody. If it can't go on forever this way, my opinion, and I've been in there every day working.
No, go ahead. George?
Yeah, so Leslie's expressed these feelings to the board of assessors. I mean, she's articulated in memo to us and to us. And we will be talking about this as a board in our upcoming meetings. And we need to evaluate the situation and decide. We are good for getting evaluations taken care of in the tax recap process for next year, so that's great. But we do need to see what the long run looks like, and that is conversations with Leslie as well as with Roy. But I tend to agree with Leslie. I'm on debate here with, but from what I've read from Roy Bishop, when I've heard Leslie say, really, we need to think about this from a long-term perspective. I'm glad, we're very relieved that we're gonna be getting to the next 6 months, and we're gonna be able to set a tax rate for next year. I mean, I hate to bring the budget to town meeting, I ain't, not even able to say,
Right.
do that, so this is great news, but we have to look at this perspective, and we will. It is a difficult market, you know, we've heard this conversation in other contexts, there's not a lot of assessors out there, there's an organization that basically sucked up all the good assessors, and it's contracting to the towns, for some reason doesn't do that. Even though they were just works for them.
And then that's why I would say that the personnel board has reviewed the job description, the board of assessors have reviewed the job description. If you could at least approve that and make authorization that how we're gonna move forward with advertising. I would love to get that job description and an advertisement, right in Roy's cover letter, he says his wife Diane would be available to do these tasks that are not mentioned. And she's not gonna last long.
Right, okay. But she's not available to January, right, when she retires?
Right, and Roy, the things that Roy talks about in general, it's not to those specifics, we haven't addressed our job, just the tasks in detail as the role of the assessor does. There's a lot that's not happening.
Okay,
Well, since, I mean, the personnel board did recommend the job description to the select board, I think we certainly can vote on that. And I just have these tools in the tool chest, so whatever is decided at the assessor meeting, that they can move forward if we choose for advertising.
when are the assessors, meeting?
May 14th.
May 14th, okay, all right. So, I would assume,
Yeah,
well, first of all, do I hear a motion to approve the job description as approved by for the administrative assessor as approved by the personnel committee?
so,
Second.
All right, any further discussion on the job description?
No.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye?
Stalker,
Farrell. Now the question is, do we, are the assessors looking for authorization to move ahead with advertising? And do you need a search committee for this? I would assume that for this sort of thing,
Represents the personnel board.
Yeah, well, we didn't, I can't remember if we discussed the search committee, I think, certainly there's a board of assessors that could do some of that. I think we advertise and see how many responses we get, right? And then if we need a committee, we can form one search committee, yeah. I feel like it's a narrowed group of people.
Because what we have said to the board did meet to discuss this once on March 27th, and then some of my emails, I said March 31st, and that's another thing. They didn't notice it, but I'm ready to lower my responsibility, my number of hours. I would love to be doing some cross training with a new person. So that I have told everybody, if the configuration changes, don't worry, I'm fine without a job. But I do feel that there's a lot of transition. You can't just, it's hard to just drop everything and say, you take over now.
okay, so you guys have a job description, the assessors. And then you're meeting on the 14th, and you want to let us know how you want to move forward then. So that,
If you address that job description.
yes, we
Yeah,
did.
we haven't
just did.
voted yet.
Oh, we haven't voted. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye.
Feral eyes, sorry.
I'll send it to you.
I got a little, Leslie, you have the job description, okay? And a sentence. No. Sometimes I get lost.
I'll send it to you.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you. Thank you for, all your hard work.
I
And all the
think to say
assessments.
that Howard has jumped ahead and done a lot of work that the town needed, you know. I'm grateful to you. I
Yes,
just
thank you, Howard.
think that we still need to jump in.
And this gives you all your tools that you need.
Okay, we have the finance committee here. Why don't you guys come up to the table so we can. Melissa.
Oh, I'll take one, sure, paper.
Okay.
There you go. I can put it up on the screen. Right? I forgot mine.
Okay, I forgot mine.
Ralph said it.
Yeah.
You can use one.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Paper, Mike.
So I'm gonna read the paper. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're just missing one person.
Hi.
We wanted to talk a little bit about the report article, something that we now way to do if you're thinking more.
Do you have, so you wanna talk to us about the ordering?
We had this,
You tweak?
yes.
Haley, could you send us the budget,
Yeah.
Wednesday?
Okay, let me finish with this.
Send it to us on
Yeah.
Wednesday.
How about, you next with Haley on that?
You can send me an email.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, that would be fine.
On Thursday. Tomorrow. Yes.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so. This is fun. How do you guys want to proceed? Do you want to go through
Do you wanna-
all the articles?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you want the warrant up and not the budget?
I'm working. Yeah. Give me one
Start with
second.
warrant. Okay.
Let me call the finance committee to order since we have a.
Oh, my goodness. My computer's not. There we go.
So Rita, it's really up to you. I mean, if you wanted a brief sort of high level overview of the budget, we could do that. And then dive in.
Yeah, why don't we do that?
Okay.
I know in the past, you guys have presented something that you have as a handout at
Yeah,
the town meeting. It looks like,
it's not quite ready,
Okay.
To share, although I am gonna sort of read a few things from it, but yeah, we'll have an annual budget report that, pretty much after tonight, I think we'll be ready to sort of finalize that.
Okay.
And share that, yeah. But I mean, I think, the sort of key numbers here are, let's see.
I'm doing
So-
you think it's ready?
This is
Close
all
enough.
estimates, so
Okay.
but that guides the discussion.
It might be easier to look at the annual report, because it just summarizes.
What I'm saying.
Yeah, that's,
Yes.
Is this ready to?
That's it, yeah, that's as of what the budget looks like today.
Okay, can I pop it up here?
I can email it if I'm ready to pop it
You
up.
wanna
want me to
email
give you-
it? He's gonna email.
I'll email
Do you
it
want
to
to
you,
email
Melissa.
it, George, or do you
I'm
want
gonna-
coming under the screen? Because you know your budget better than I do.
Oh, yeah, well, I'm not.
Report. Go ahead,
No,
log in.
let's-
The report. Go ahead, log in.
Let me just-
You know it better than I do, so.
Oh, well,
Just log into the
it's,
meeting.
the
Yeah, log in.
annual report is easier to move around in, but let me join the meeting.
Okay.
Better frame it.
Let me see if we-
I can start talking while George
Okay.
pull that up. So,
So we've got. The finance committee has developed the budget, we voted on it, at our last meeting. It was approved unanimously by committee members. Just kind of a high level overview, we have a total operating budget of $7,678,806. That represents
Turn your speakers.
an increase of about $424,000 from fiscal year 25. As a proportion, that's a 5.9% increase. So let me just pause there and just acknowledge that this is a really challenging budget year for our town and every one of our neighbors, for anybody who reads the newspaper. And I think we've done really well to manage what I think were some really significant challenges. And we can talk about a few of those. I think you probably are curious about sort of what are the biggest drivers that are reflected in that 5.9% increase. And I think, yeah, this section here that we're looking at on the screen pretty much lays it out. So we're budgeting for a 7.7% increase in our assessment to the regional school district. And I think you guys probably, have kind of followed this this year. That is an unusual increase, even though I think we all know that the region has been dealing with significant increases over the last couple of years. What makes it unusual this year is that for the first time, I think in the history of our region, what we refer to as the statutory method or the modified statutory method is being fully implemented this year without any of the guardrail measures that had been used in the previous few fiscal years. And what that means is that 3 of the 4 communities that are part of the region are experiencing very significant increases in their assessment because the formula is actually not cushioning what would have otherwise been significant increases that they would have been required to pay. So for us, it's a big increase at 7.7%. For Leverett, it was 14 and change percent. And for Pelham, it was 22% roughly. And so, I think this is sort of a good news, bad news kind of situation. It's sort of a painful sort of pill to swallow in this current fiscal year that we're budgeting for. We're doing something to kind of help cushion that increase. We'll talk about in a second. The good news is that this is the methodology that our town has advocated for as long as I've been a member of the committee. And we're kind of resetting each town's assessment so that I think next year and beyond, we will not have these wildly sort of distorting increases where one town is increasing by 20+% and another town is 3%. I think that now that we're sort of resetting every community's assessment, we should have kind of more reasonable increases in the future.
And I want to point out that is a budget for the regional school that's $812,000 below level service. And they had a relatively big increase last year, but they are still working below level services and have been for many, many years. So this is also a little bit about digging out of the hole.
Other
significant comment, just not to disagree with Susan, but to slightly put a different angle on it. One of the problems that the regional school has is they've had a decrease in enrollment. So level services for decrease in enrollment is a complicated question. And that's something that has to be addressed. Apparently, there's going to be a long-term study group that will study the future of the school and the financial the financing of that service in the town, in the region, so probably a beneficial thing for all of us.
Yeah, I will also say about the regional schools, it's been cut, there's been cuts to the regional school have been happening for 10 years. At least 10 years, and it's, you know, I say it all the time, it's one thing to cut back as your population decreases, but what's been happening at the regions, programs have been getting cut. So it's deeper than, it's more than just a reaction to shrinking enrollments, it's also lack of revenue from the state. The chapter 70 money has not been keeping up. If you look at the annual increase in chapter 70, it's 1% or less every year. Meanwhile, school expenses continue to grow. Teacher salaries are, you know, they're coming up like all salaries. And so the cuts we've been making are not just related to population. We're getting down the bone.
Well, it's also not, we're still feeling the effects of COVID. I mean, that has not gone away.
What about the 5-year rolling average? Does that get?
Yeah, so that's
The statutory, because, you
Yeah.
know, you always had that.
This is a lot.
Yeah, real
Yeah.
quick, so, real quick, the agreement used to be 5-year rolling after a population, and that's all your assessment is based on. And when we negotiated that and finally came up with something everybody agreed to, they agreed to use a statutory method with one modification, that is, instead of using the minimum contribution for each town, we would roll that over 5 years, and the other towns seem to be okay with that. But as AJ said, we were using it, but we were putting constraints on it, now we're not.
Yeah.
And the other towns are having to pay for that.
So the way that this language reads, it doesn't mention 5-year rolling average, but it just says using the statutory method
Yeah.
as I outlined.
Yeah.
That's.
As, that's in the
All right.
regional agreement.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure
Yeah.
that there's nothing.
One of the things we learned this year, because DESI has sort of asserted, kind of a bigger role for themselves in helping our region, solve this problem. One of the things we learned is that there really isn't a statutory method that it's sort of like every district that's utilizing it is expected to have its own implementation of the statutory method. So there are sort of concepts that are consistent among every community that's using it, but anyway, so. Right, the guardrails were, mentioned, yeah. So that's a significant, increase. Our elementary school budget is increasing by 5%. We have this enormous increase in our health insurance premium. This is something that's affecting the region's, budget, and I think every community, in our area. The police wages, so that's a significant increase. Kind of built into that line there is a 10% increase that my understanding is built into the contract, that officers have. So they were going to experience a 10% increase in their pay this year. And then we have a placeholder in our budget for the chief's salary, and so when you collapse all of that together, we're looking at a 19% increase in police personnel costs. COLA increases for town employees is 3.32%. I think one thing that's actually, I just realized is not on this list, is we did have this salary alignment study that the personnel committee employed this year. We should probably add that bullet to this.
I'm not sure how much.
We'll pull up what the total, I think there were 6 positions, if I remember correctly.
They're probably add up to more than 10,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
That's what
I can do that.
So there were 6 positions that were deemed to be kind of out of alignment with what, neighboring towns have budgeted for those roles. And so the personnel committee is recommending a certain increase to kind of reset those. So that's a portion of this. We don't have the number right, yeah. Let's see, the administrative assistant, there's an hourly sort of increase in the actual budgeted number of hours for that position. So, then we have some decreases. Last year, we funded a $40,000 appropriation for a town buildings repair fund. We're not doing that this year, not because it's not important, but because they're, I think, actually due to a sort of technical error, that line got sort of overfunded last year, so we're not needing to do that this year. And then, you know, the rest of it is kind of small, small increases. So yeah, the only thing we'll need to add to this is that salary alignment study. I'm trying to think what else. You know, this was a little bit of a simpler year in terms of capital items. I think you probably noticed that while there are, I think, 5 capital items.
Can you go over revenue though? too?
Yeah, sure, we can do that, yeah. That would be. Yeah, that would be 2, yep, yeah. All right, so, obviously, we're utilizing our full 2.5% tax levy, and we're actually utilizing some of our excess levy capacity that we've accrued over the last number of years. And we're doing that for a couple of reasons. Obviously, we need to balance the budget, but you know, I think we made I think we exhausted our ability to utilize cash reserves for operating budget lines, and I think we kind of maximized our ability to do that. And so, in order to balance the budget, we're having to dip into some of that excess levy capacity, and that is going to have an impact on the tax rate. We'll talk about that in a minute. We do have a pretty conservative estimate in terms of new growth. This budget assumes $45,000 of new growth. Our kind of philosophy has always been to estimate these very conservatively, and what it's meant in recent years is that you know, we've actually, the tax rate that has been implemented was actually lower than what we brought to town meeting, and we think it's better to err on that side than the opposite. I think one thing we should probably acknowledge is that actually, I think this was a pretty good year in terms of the estimated state aid. You know, we certainly have a lot of concerns about Chapter 70 funding, but I think overall, this increase in state aid of $57,000, I think, was a larger increase than we observed in the last few fiscal years. And that's, by the way, is an estimate. It's based on the house's
That's the houses.
budget. That's sort of the most recent available estimates. So that's what we're using. Yes. And I should probably mention, so if you want to go to 4, those are our capital items. And so you'll see there are 5 of them, but they're fairly modest. Highway grader is being repaired. There's a new mower for the highway department. There's $10,000 for needed repairs to this meeting room. There's a new fire alarm system that we need to, I guess it's not a new system, right? It's an upgrade to the existing fire alarm system that is required. And then there's an $8,000 for a grant match for the Lake Wyola district that I think is connected to a proposal that the town is submitting. All of those are, our recommendation is to fund them from free cash. Under 4B here is a set of 5, well, I should say actually 4 of those 5 are items in our operating budget. So 1, 2, 3, and 5. Health insurance, elementary school budget, regional school budget, and veterans benefits. Those are 4 items where we're utilizing cash reserves, or we're recommending we use cash reserves to kind of, we really have 2 rationales for this. When we have an item, like an operating budget item where we think there's something unusual about what the town is dealing with in that given budget year, we think it's reasonable to use cash reserves to fund that. So that applies to, I think, both the elementary school and the regional school. The elementary school, we have a kind of unique out-of-district placement. There's some expenses related to that. And on the regional school budget, because we're seeing such a significant increase as we implement the modified statutory method, we are recommending using some cash reserves to kind of cushion that, the impact of that. And then the veterans benefits, that's a line where we anticipate getting reimbursed for that in the future. So for a variety of reasons, we think it's reasonable to use cash reserves to at least partially fund those items, and you can see the amounts there.
Because you don't expect that they will show up the next year.
Well,
Health insurance will.
yeah, so in a couple of cases, in the elementary school and the regional school, it's possible that we will not see those in future years. I don't know what the status of the out-of-district placement is at the elementary school, but by sort of definition, those are unusual expenses that we're trying to essentially cover for using cash reserves. In the case of health insurance, that's really, yes, that is going to be an ongoing issue. We made the decision that rather than have that roughly $100,000 increase hit taxpayers all in one year, to sort of cushion that blow by sort of absorbing half of that increase with cash reserves, and then having the other half of it basically use tax levy for the other half of that.
They said that, that large bump of 100,000 is partly due to having used up some of their reserves to meet the, pharmacy costs that were going way up. So they should be on a different footing. So we're not expecting $100,000 increase next year. We're hoping that putting some of the money in now and some of the money in next year, whatever increase it'll be small or.
Like, no.
Well, some of us disagree with this, even though we all voted for this budget, because I think it's completely unknown what's going to be the state of pharmaceuticals, given the climate tariffs and the rest of it, and all these chemicals are made in China, and so we don't know. But we could get hit with a bigger surprise next year. So this is a gamble, really.
And then C and D are connected to warrant articles where we're proposing potentially using cash reserves to fund these things. They're not part of our operating budget. So the C is, we are proposing using cash reserves to fund the PFAS mitigation line. Those expenses that we've obviously been incurring. There's a long sort of story that I know you guys are aware of about we were under the impression that we had applied for, received no interest loan for this purpose. We think that may not be available to us. So we have previously authorized the town meeting, the treasurer on 2 separate occasions to borrow $150,000 each time for PFAS mitigation expenses. He is about to secure the first of those $150,000 loans, I think in the coming couple of weeks, if it hasn't already happened. And then the finance committee is recommending that rather than have him go out for a second loan, which is going to have associated interest expense, that we've got enough cash reserves to fund that. And we thought it'd be better to sort of save on the interest expense and not, borrow, in a second, allotment of $150,000.
Just to buttress your point.
Yeah.
It's also not clear when and if we have to spend that second $150,000. We don't know, we have money in the line now.
Yeah.
And we are not gonna be paying interest when we don't even need to spend it in the knowable future, so having these reserves in hand in the line will give us the opportunity to take the money when we need it. In the meantime, I think it still gets interest, doesn't it?
It earns interest off the
It's
bat.
still sitting
Yeah,
there.
whatever we have to spend, we'll.
So I mean, I think it just gives us a little confidence that we can deal with what comes up next.
Yeah, and in the town meetings, we approved 2 bands for $150,000.
Right.
And, but at that time, we thought it was gonna be interest free.
Right.
Now that
So we're
it's
gonna get
interest-free,
0%
we might as
interest.
well-
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and some possible forgiveness. too.
And you have an interest
Right.
payment in this budget.
Yes.
For
So oh, you do, so
For
you,
the-
We're just borrowing,
the
so
first
it's,
one.
it's actually.
oh, okay,
Yeah, so I think it's 7,000 and
Yeah.
change, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's for the first of those 150K bands that.
so I guess my question to Haley, and I don't know if you have this number yet, is do you know where we are in terms of how much money we have expended and whether or not we've moved into that additional 150?
I have to connect with Gail on Thursday when she's next, and she just closed out the warrant, but she is concerned that we're running out of money.
So even the 300,000 is not gonna be enough.
No. She wrote us a note that
Yeah,
said,
I'm looking at,
they have $4,000 left right now, and they haven't put the 150 in, that's gonna be borrowed
So
right now.
4,000 from the first 150?
136 was our first one that
Okay,
came out of free cash, and so it's not clear how fast this is going out. We don't know what invoices have been forwarded to the right people. But we're not out now, but she said that probably would be used in the Tiger bond, contract or whatever it's called.
Just trying to look at her email.
Yeah,
So
I'm just
please note-
concerned, yeah.
please note, after I pay the bills this week, I will have about $4,000 in available funds to pay future testing bills. Now,
That's from the first 136?
correct, and there's about to be an additional $150,000 that Ryan is borrowing again in the coming days. That will fund, that will, yeah. that will
Well, we
fund-
don't know what other invoices are in process. That's the
Right.
piece that we're catching up to.
Yeah, because the,
But we'll be prepared.
yeah, because the monthly expenses are pretty significant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And town bonds run through right now.
yeah.
Testing everything as well, so we
Yeah.
get billed for this.
So we just had, so we had a bunch come in
Yeah.
recently. Yeah, I think, for purposes of planning, what we really need to do is figure out going forward, how much is this costing us on an annual
Yeah.
basis? Assuming we're, I don't know, are we at 78 households or, something in that neighborhood where you have the POET systems, you have the quarterly testing. And, how much is, and then tie-in bonds, whatever they're charging.
And Gabe made an estimate for us, which is just simply an estimate.
Yeah.
She said 50,000 a year. And the other piece is that the state changed the testing regulations since the beginning of this process. So there's lots of moving parts.
Yeah,
But they changed it in our favor direction. They made it less frequent. So
okay.
that was helpful.
Can I ask you all a question about this?
Yeah.
Now, we went forward with this plan that was developed by the select board to do the testing, to install the forwards and the rest of it. With the understanding that the state was supporting us with these with the interest-free loans, and they were gonna be possibly forgiven. So now that the circumstances are different, is there gonna be a time when you review what you're obligated to do, what you want to do, and what the cost might be, and how that might come into consideration moving
Yeah.
forward? Because it seems like it's unknown.
Yeah, well,
It's a huge
it's up to DEP,
Yeah.
what they're forcing us to
Are
do.
they forcing us to do? so we
Yeah,
do
they
it?
yeah.
made a judgment.
Oh, yeah.
And they sent a paper saying.
Okay.
you gotta do
That was not
this.
good. That's.
Yeah,
something
no,
to
we
talk
don't
about.
have any choice, but I know that Kaylee's pursuing, so DEP really, or Clean Water Trust,
Yeah.
really screwed up.
Yeah,
When they said, and they did it twice, right? It was not only once, they did it a second time, and then they came back and said, oh, that's not a public water system, it's a well, you can't have any of our money. But
That's tomorrow. I'm meeting with Elena and, I think Maddie from Rep Saunders' office to talk about how their conversations went with the Clean Water Trust. So maybe we can get something.
we're putting that arm twist on DEP.
That's great. Yeah, I hope that the reps can help. Do you actually have paperwork from Clean Water Trust?
I have only found one document. I think it's the initial 150,000. So I do
Okay.
have that. But their claim is that that never should have gotten the green light.
Yeah, so we went ahead with it.
Yeah.
Like.
That's why they owe us.
Tell them we're next to the quad.
They don't know who we are. We're next to the quad, we expect them.
Correct, keep fast on.
Are the equivalent of a municipal
No,
water
I know,
supply.
I know.
This isn't-
Yeah.
Well, the way this is going, we will have a municipal.
Right, yeah. So anyway, it is being pursued and I would say the legislators,
We've been supportive.
have been really supportive and we're gonna put the, the pressure on DEP, like,
That's great.
Yeah, maybe someday we can transfer the funds back into the state.
Yeah.
maybe,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little scary to me not to not think of PFAS as being in the operating budget, because to me, it's in the
Yeah.
whether we want it to be or not. It's not gonna go away.
So I think we have had at least initial discussions about the concept of having a revolving fund, and
Yeah.
we can put a certain amount of funds from the operating budget, but I think we need that information that you talked about, Rita, which is having a real good sense of what this costs us. on a
our
regular
obligations
basis.
going forward, yeah.
It's hard to plan.
Because at some point, those POET systems are probably gonna need to be replaced.
Yeah.
too.
filters.
So I don't, so the filters have to get replaced, but the POET systems themselves, not,
Oh, really?
they could become obsolete, just like solar panels become obsolete.
I apologize, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Bob.
That's fine.
Anyway,
Yeah.
it's just, it's.
And in fact,
this
I
is if
think,
there's no
I think in putting it, we can't, our operating budget's so stressed, we have to put it over
Yeah.
there for right now,
Yeah.
until we get a number.
Mm.
But the other piece is, I think the town needs to understand, this is one of the biggest issues in front of our town financially. And it's required, and it should be known that it's required, and the town responded with, we want to protect people's water supplies. So, but it's a big piece, it's
Oh,
bigger than
definitely.
anything else recently.
Yeah.
And so when the town prioritizes what it spends, it has to know that this is right there.
Yeah.
And it will probably be in the operating budget, maybe not next year. We'll
We
see.
need to start using it into the budget.
Yeah.
We do.
I'm sorry, I just one other question, way back to our regional school thing. What's the sense, and I know we can't really predict it, but some of those other towns are having, I mean, we have a big increase. They're having a huge increase.
Yes.
Is there any sense that everyone happy with that? Think that's gonna work?
I mean,
And
so
what if it doesn't? I guess that's-
Leverett passed
that's the
their,
corollary.
Leverett had their town meeting, I think, last
Saturday.
weekend, and they approved their increase, so that, I think that's a big one. And Pelham has, John Trickey has supported this proposed budget, and so I think there's some optimism, and one of the things that's changed since we are implementing the statutory method is that the budget actually only needs to be approved by 3 of the 4 communities, where in previous years, when we've had alternative assessments using these guardrails, all 4 towns had to approve it. So Leverett already did, Amherst is going to because it benefits them. And so between Pelham and Shutesbury, one of those towns, as long as one of those towns.
And once people make the shift in their budget, we are funding some of it out of our cash reserves, but we'll be ready for next year. So once you push your budget over there, unless something else blows up, which could happen, I don't think that they're looking to go back to the long fight about assessment. So there they are.
Okay, cash reserves.
Yeah, actually, so the last item is D, so we, as a FinCom, we were told that we're expecting about, I know it's hard to plan, but, we were told that to expect about $30,000 of legal expenses needed to continue to defend the town in the solar bylaw litigation. The finance committee made a decision, which was instead of having this be an item in our operating budget, we would like to engage the town in a discussion about this. And we think it's a good time for everybody to either, as a community, to either reaffirm our commitment to defending the town in this litigation, in which case we need to have, the town needs to appropriate $30,000 specifically for this purpose. This is totally separate from the legal line that's in our operating budget. Or by voting this down, I think that signals a desire to change direction. Yeah. And I think it'll be kind of useful to have this opportunity to engage the community in about it. So that was our thinking there. That is section 5. You're looking at the status of our cash reserves if all of those things happen. And so the good news is that we have guidance built into our FinCom that recommends having at least 10% of our operating budget in free cash reserves and 5% in stabilization reserves. And we're essentially there. If all of these things pass, that $733,000 of free cash left over, that represents about 9.5% of our operating budget. And then the remaining stabilization funds there represents 5.4% of our budget. So in total, our reserves would reflect 14.9% of our annual operating budget, which is essentially like where we want to be. We don't want to be below that. So, we are, like, I think in the last couple of years, we've had a little bit more of a cushion than we're going to this year if all these things pass, but that's what it is there.
Yeah, the only thing about that, if I can just add,
Yeah.
no one about the free cash, I should probably do one next to free cash. This doesn't count when it's being certified next year, any new increases to free cash, which happens every year. So the 9.5 AJ talked about, it'll probably be over 10%.
Yeah, so any, unexpended budget lines from FY 25, will end up moving into free cash at the end.
Yeah.
Is there any sense of, I'm not saying you're doing the right thing, believe me, I'm not saying this, I understand the predicament we're in, but we're spending a lot of money, a lot of free cash and excess levy capacity. What happens? It's the classic question. What happens next year?
Well, I think we have to, sort of manage the challenge that we faced this year. And our approach all along was like, we could, was to try to recommend a budget that does two things, right? It funds the services that our town residents have approved every year at, a town meeting. So we think this reflects the level of services that residents expect and to receive from the town. And that this budget, we think, kind of cushions the the impact of what is a very significant increase in the overall operating expenses. It cushions the impact on taxpayers by utilizing those cash reserves. If those reserves weren't in the sort of very healthy position that they were going into this fiscal year, I think it's fair to say we'd be making a different set of decisions. But we felt like we had sufficient reserves to utilize for this purpose, and we think it's ultimately in the interest to give some tax relief to residents. And so I think we feel comfortable Now, who knows what's gonna happen next year? Some of the big increases that we face this year, I think there is a sort of plausible argument for why those were sort of unusual increases. We talked about them already. So hopefully, hopefully we'll be in a better position next year, but obviously.
I have thoughts on that.
Who knows? Yeah.
Susie, go ahead.
And it's important to lobby our legislators for rural aid. Because the simplest thing they can do is just up that number and not worry about formulas, not argue the politics. It's just push that number. And the other kinds of revenue, and so there may be some relief in this budget. They passed a supplemental, or the House passed a supplemental one for FY25, and they're gonna fully fund the circuit breaker, and that's likely to go ahead with the Senate. It's likely to happen for FY25, so that is good news. And the other piece is, as George has been saying, the lobbying for the Quabbin waters and the pilot is another possible revenue stream that at some point might lighten our load.
We just had a meeting on that before, this, but there's been a big pushback by the WRA,
Yeah.
so.
Of course.
So it's gonna take a lot of work.
It will take time, and it will take a lot of letter writing, and it will take a lot of arguing.
11 towns work coordinate our efforts.
Well, that's what we're arranging
Right.
right now, so we had a meeting with Joe Comerford and
And
all the towns.
Yeah.
So it was a good session.
And I believe she's gaining political clout, and so what she brings up, and when she brings it up over and over, I think it moves the ball down the field, but it is slow, it's not nimble.
How much is the state government affected by the federal government? Right?
Yes, they are.
It doesn't, that ultimately affect us. Oh,
Yes.
will.
It will trickle down.
The Senate put out their, did you see that the DLS released the cherry sheet that the Senate proposed, and there's no good surprises.
No.
And so that's a little bit, I believe, their reaction to what they don't know is gonna happen. But I think that philosophically, this town is trying to meet what we do know is right here. And instead of sort of putting off things because we don't know. And here we are, right on the ground.
Okay, thank you for that summary. So there might be a few little tweaks here and there, but you'll have that ready.
I think we're gonna start. There's one very sort of minor change which we learned about, which is the library custodian expense, which we budgeted for this year in the library budget. It's about $5,000. I think that we were told that's a reasonable estimate of what's gonna be needed in the new building.
Yeah.
Mary Ann has told us that by including that in the library's budget, that impacts because as a certified library, a certain percentage of their budget has to be spent on new materials, and so that would have a sort of a trickle down effect. So they're asking us to pull that out of the library's budget, and so there's a town buildings custodian line, which I think we should move it to.
Yeah, it's not gonna affect the bond.
It doesn't
Okay.
affect
It's just moving
anything,
it.
it's just moving it from one
Okay.
line. to the other.
Okay, all right, great.
Oh, yeah, do you want to know what the sort of
Yeah.
the tax rate
I was
impact
afraid-
is? Yeah.
I was afraid to ask.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's right there, in that box. So, based on all of these assumptions,
Mhm.
we would expect a tax rate of $16.60 for every $1,000 of assessed value. Would be an increase from the FY25 rate of $15.80. The impact on, the average single family tax bill is what's in that second part there, yeah. So it's basically, if you look at those two columns there, so the average single family tax bill for FY25 was $6,257. Based on all these assumptions. The average single-family tax bill would be $6,596 with this new tax rate, so that would be an increase of $338.
And that's the high end.
Yeah.
Because we think our revenues, we're trying to estimate our other revenues lower, and if any. The state funding or the local receipts end up being higher than the assessors are setting the tax rate, then the tax levy goes down, and these tax rates will be adjusted down.
Yeah.
So hopefully, I think we probably want to tell people, the increase in your tax bill next year is probably gonna be somewhere between 300 and 340. Might be a better way to do this.
Yeah. But yeah, I think you should think of that as a ceiling.
Yeah.
So, will that be part of your presentation then? Too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just, yeah, I think
That's the
that,
bottom line.
yeah, that's really important to make sure everybody kind of gets it.
Yeah.
No big surprise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's less than.
Yeah.
And we're really hoping to do that.
Yeah, and I'll say, that they were, until fairly recently, we thought this number would be more like $500.
Right.
So I know it's a significant number. But I think a lot of work went into a set of decisions we've talked about here to provide some relief to taxpayers so that it's not
Yeah.
$500.
And the other thing is, in the past several years, it hasn't gone up 2.5. That's why we
Right,
have excess
right,
levy capacity.
Right.
It
Yeah.
hasn't been jumping more than like $200, so it's not, and that's because we are careful and because we are conservative about how we spend the town's money. So here we are, we have to deal with this, and that's not such a big womp.
Yeah, we're always cognizant of the impact on the taxpayer, I think that's part of that argument, part of that conversation.
Yeah.
And I don't know, if we didn't mention this number, but the amount of excess levy capacity that what this budget uses is 148,500.
In the
Yeah, it's
total,
right.
in the
What-
total.
what is
it
total?
It's on line 15.
Yeah.
has 915.
Uh,
So if you look at line
And
Excess
15 right
levy
they
here.
remain
capacity.
unused levy capacity.
So our
Oh, that's a
levy
pretty
capacity,
amazing, yeah,
going into this year, our
Wow.
unused levy capacity is 862.
yeah,
If we use 149,000, it's gonna go to 714, so we
Yeah.
have enough unused levy capacity, if at 150,000 a
Yeah.
year, it lasts us
Yeah.
5 years.
yeah, except that
4
means
years.
taxes
Yeah,
go
right.
up every year.
But when you talk to the state, if you're talking to the
Yeah.
DOR and they say, you got excess levy capacity.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you're fine. That's what
right,
you're gonna say.
right,
I know
no.
the people voting on the budget
Yeah.
don't agree with that, but that's their perspective.
Yeah.
Why aren't you
And that was
taxing
that was a different tension with the other 4 towns.
Yeah.
They didn't have that piece. We
They didn't have that ability,
excess levy capacity.
Amherst does not,
Amherst does not have.
the other 2 towns,
yeah.
they have excess levy capacity. I'm one of them to the extent that we do. I think Pelham has. One of them does.
So
So,
Pelham always does.
yeah, I think Pelham's in pretty good shape on excess levy capacity. I'm not sure about that.
Okay, all right, so I think we can move through some of these articles pretty fast, because
Yeah.
most of it is what we've already discussed. So
Yeah,
thank you for
and you
that
can see on your
overview.
warrant, you see our vote, so we voted on
Yes,
everything here.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
one that will have to.
I would just want to make sure that you don't have any further edits, so if you can look at this, because I know we like to get it,
Yeah.
as cleaned up as possible before we send it to, before we vote on it and before we send it to town council. for
And so when are
review.
you voting?
Well, probably not tonight, I think we'll meet next week, and yeah,
And has town council looked at this at all?
no, no, because she really doesn't want to see it until it's been, yeah. It's a waste of money, yeah. Last year, we were sending her drafts and she's like, I don't want to see these,
Until you're short.
until corrected all the typos and.
So do we have this draft? The draft they're referring to? We need this.
I got it today,
Okay.
actually, yeah.
So,
So
yeah.
I'll
if you
share
just
it.
share it. It's pretty close. So Article 1 is reports, Article 2 is and I had asked the question about whether or not we needed to have the 5-year rolling average, but we don't. So that's the regional school budget. Article 3 was the totals that we talked about
Mhm.
here. articles for, is the
Salary
compensation, yeah. 5 is the treasurer entering into contracts and balance agreements, that's pretty standard. 6, grant standard. 7, you guys voted on for, Catherine Hilton. 8 is the Walter Tibbetts. 9, you guys, that's committee recommends. I thought just on the private duty detail account, didn't Gail say that,
I asked that question.
oh, you did?
Brian,
Okay.
Let the answer back.
That was that separate article so that we have a revolving account, so people who do private duty can be paid, but
Yeah.
there was some question about whether or not it belonged in revolving
Yeah, I
accounts
asked
or
it
if it was
because
a
that's what I
separate.
thought.
I thought, so we need to just check on
It
that one.
makes sense to have it revolving,
Yeah.
because you're getting
Yeah.
reimbursed by the utility.
Yeah, no, I know, I don't know why Gail thought it had a different, but
Can't argue with
the
it.
town accountant, yeah, had a different. take
Oh,
on it.
that's interesting.
Yeah,
Remember some
Okay,
of
so
ours.
this is what, this is when I asked Brennan, he checked with Gail, and her response was, really question. Anyway, she's asking if it's revolving fund, if so, the outside detail has never been added as a bylaw, so it does not belong there. Outside detail is an agency account and needs no authorization from town meeting. So we authorized it to be funded, and remember, it's revolving, so
but it's
we
not a
pay out
bylaw.
when,
Right.
so when, say, one of the officers, does a
Right.
detail,
Right.
they're paid, and when the invoice and payment comes in from, say, National Grid, it's put back in. So maybe it doesn't work the same way as this revolving fund.
Yeah.
The initial amount never changes,
Mhm.
as long as it's being reimbursed by the
So,
National Grid or.
yeah, stay tuned with that might get removed,
Okay.
so. Okay, so the PFAS, we talked about the 50 and the 100, rescinding the prior authorization
Yeah, so
to borrow.
Article 11, we need to do if Article 10 passes, because we
Okay,
had previously, the town had previously authorized Brian to borrow this money, and
Yeah.
so by passing Article 10, we're actually using cash reserves for that. purpose.
okay,
If Article 10 fails, then
Yeah.
we can just withdraw.
we just withdraw Article 11. Okay, we have the mower, we have on Article 12, Article 13, we have the highway department grader. The 8648 for the fire alarm system. The $10,000 for needed town hall repairs, Article 15. Article 16, I just wanted to make sure that the wording was right on this.
Yeah.
Because I got really mixed up, like
Okay.
what the $8,000. It's for the match, the Rural Development Fund grant, which is for the stormwater management.
All right, so maybe we
Right,
can
so that's the GZA proposal,
The one that's due in June.
the one that is due in June, and it's not for the one for the dam repairs and upgrades, which
No.
is gonna be CPA and then a state grant.
Yeah.
Okay,
And the 8,000,
we might not need the whole
Yeah.
amount.
it might end
Right.
up being that we get reimbursed 4,000 from the Lake Wyola Association.
Yeah.
They've expressed interest in this grant as well.
Okay, so the $8,000, and we'll just get this language proper,
Yeah.
is the matching funds for the Rural Development Fund application for stormwater. Stormwater. Actually, it's an H&H study, so it's like hydrology and Yeah, okay, so we'll get that language for the H and H study. Yeah, okay, Tom, go ahead.
It's also gonna include the legal field one that you mentioned.
Yeah,
Because
so,
that was, it wasn't so big.
right, okay. Yeah, so we just have to get that, yeah, so, and there was an addition to that. Okay, just so you know, we'll get that language, but that's what, do you, yeah, you're okay, do you need to vote again, or?
No.
Okay, all right. Okay, it's $30,000, we know for legal expenses and solar bylaw litigation. Then we have the MLP, retained earnings, and then the whole MLP budget, operating budget. Do you guys go through that with them? You do?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right, so you go through the whole thing.
Yeah. Previously.
Okay, and I think, do you have any other articles? I don't think you do.
So there's a new one that
Okay.
is a prior bill. that I
Oh,
think
okay,
Just emerged, we haven't vote, I think we should vote on.
yeah,
it.
why don't you go ahead and vote, yeah,
So,
bill of prior
everybody,
year,
there's a new, article, to see if the town will vote to pay bills from prior years. A bill from Encore Fire Protection dated 11/13/2024, $134 for annual fire extinguisher service. So I'll make a motion to recommend approval.
Second, yeah, third.
Just checking. We'll just go down the line. Okay. Cash and I.
Right.
Hemingway, aye.
Oh.
voice from the, whoa. Hi, Jack.
So that's 6-0.
Okay. All right, so you had the language for that to get put into the article.
For the grants?
Yeah, no, for the bill of prior year, who has read it? Who came up with that?
I got it. from
Yeah,
here.
Haley,
It's in
okay.
here, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Maybe not one here.
It is in here already? Yeah.
Just one bit.
I just,
Yeah, good, 20 bills.
oh, there, okay. I had the
Oh,
wrong,
you have
I
one.
had the wrong copy. Okay, all right, Jill. Okay. Okay, I'm looking, yeah, there were a few versions. No, it's okay. I think this is the, I think I have the right one now here. I just have to get rid of,
Is that an extra
yeah.
copy?
yeah, okay, so let me get rid of this one. Okay. Okay, so I think that completes our work with the finance committee, except that I just have to tell you, and I know we've mentioned this before, I think Abe had mentioned it while she was still here. We're still dealing during this fiscal year with litigation stuff around the solar bylaw. And, I can't divulge anything sort of outside of executive session, but leave it to say that there's still ongoing negotiations, discussions. I think we're meeting tomorrow, and with outside counsel, and it's a joint planning board and select board meeting with outside counsel and Donna to figure out what's happening. So stay tuned, because there might be some additional expenses that will be incurred this year. And just so you know, Gail and Brennan pulled together all of the, so we'll have that for you, all of the outside counsel, and I can get that to you. The one thing we don't have, which Brennan will be working on, is and it's a little trickier, is Donna's.
We have it.
You have it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great.
So,
Oh, good, okay, because that was a little harder, because you have to go through every bill. So we have the ones for Costa, Talaman, and whatever their name is. And we can get that for you, and obviously we'll need it for town meeting too. So.
Any idea how much this lasts?
I didn't, you know what, I didn't even add it, I didn't add it up, April, but I can go back and maybe just do it by, you know, by year. Because for a while, there really wasn't anything going on, so there was, but then last few months, it's been.
What do we have in our FinCom?
Yeah, I was
reserves?
gonna say,
30?
it's
No,
not
not
35,800 and change, yeah.
35%?
Yeah,
And then we have possibly 12,000 at the school because, coming through the salaries that didn't get,
Yeah.
pegged at the beginning, they projected what it would cost for that contract and there seemed to be a little short maybe. But we also talked to people about transferring from, lines after May
Yeah.
1st, so.
yeah,
So we have access,
Yeah.
but like our health insurance used to be that pot.
Right,
It's not that
right,
pot this
right,
year.
right.
Well,
So there's not a lot of, a lot of excess.
Line to line.
cash.
We're gonna
Yeah.
use it all up.
We're looking at our 35
Yeah.
and hoping we can get through to.
So are you
Thirty.
doing, are you looking at line to line transfers now?
No.
No,
I
okay,
just
All right.
turned over May 1.
Yeah.
That usually happens.
Yeah.
yeah, okay, all right.
It-
Yeah, it's just, I don't know when this stuff is gonna hit, so. Yeah. You'll already.
Yeah, we might.
Okay, well, thank you very much for all your hard work. I
Yeah, thank you.
really
Sure, yeah.
appreciate it.
Fantastic work.
You make our job, easy. Sort of. That part of our job. easy.
Okay, so you adjourn.
Yeah, I'm gonna adjourn the FinCom.
Okay,
Second.
all right, thanks a lot. Okay,
7:15.
so we just had, we have the emergency management team, emergency management directors request to engage Phil Gilmore for Massachusetts.
Yeah, we have to vote on that. Remember, we had it at the EMC meeting.
Yeah.
Call Lenny and Phil presents that. to us.
All we do is have to say
We
yes.
just have to give our like official, like
Okay.
vote for it, because we were not in our first session, but we were as our initiation.
But there's no money involved with that, right? Can you guys take it outside? And just put up your dukes.
No, no. There was no money involved,
Okay.
or if there was something that was coming out of the EMT, or the grants with the EMT, but we have to vote to authorize them.
Okay, all right, so do I hear a motion to authorize the engagement of?
I'll ask you to be quiet.
Thank you. To engage Phil Gilmore for the Massachusetts Firewise.
Yes, so moved.
Second.
Okay, any more discussion?
No.
Well, do we have to get Lenny? I mean,
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
tell
we
him.
want-
to do
We
it.
just, do you want to give him an email tomorrow, just that we approved it, so
Yeah.
he can, you know,
Just
go
close
on.
the
schedule.
loop.
Yep, just
Yep.
close the loop.
Great.
Okay, so all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Make these O'Neill, aye?
Doc, right.
Farrell, aye. Great, so town administrator report, I know this is a lot to try to do tonight, Haley, what are you?
I kept it pretty short. I
Okay.
can, I can talk on the fly
Okay,
if you need me to. But I knew we had a jam-packed agenda, so I
Yeah.
didn't know my blog, that's not too much. So one of the highlights I wanted to say was just talking with all the department heads today. That's why actually the tables are set up this way.
uh-huh.
No, it worked out
Yeah,
great for
yeah,
tonight
yeah.
anyways, yeah.
So it was really helpful, we talked a lot about, what past practice has been, kind of what people's goals are for the future. We made a couple jokes about maybe some repair work that's to be done to the building, so it was helpful,
So
because,
everyone's thinking.
they said that really hadn't happened in a very long time.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a good first step, and we made it a routine every other month to start, and then we'll try to meet quarterly. I said, I just want to get my feet wet.
Yeah.
More communication than not in the beginning, so. That's a thing now,
Good.
and I definitely wanna kind of target things, we talked a lot also about the website and issues with the fax machine and just, so for me, those are like easy wins. If we can
Yes.
figure those out, I think
Right.
people will be very happy.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't cost too much money. I met with the FERCog last week, and one of the people I talked to, I think it was Megan, talked about the ADA accessibility grant. And so that is something that I would like to see us pursue. So what, essentially for this first go around, and FERCog already has a cost estimate for their services to implement it, but it would be for us to get a plan, like an ADA action plan. And then that sets the bar for future rounds of funding, which could include things like accessibility features, digital accessibility audits, audiovisual equipment to amplify sound. So this would just be like a groundwork thing, and I think the grant, I think what they had quoted was probably $11,000. But
Do
it
we
is,
have to write it, or are they gonna write it?
it's pretty much good to go. I think I just have to tweak things from their proposal. But the thing that I do need you to do is to vote to designate me as your ADA coordinator, because if you don't have an ADA coordinator, you can't apply at all.
I think the town, well, I mean, you're new to us, so we haven't designated you as that, but I think in the appointed list, the town administrator is that.
Okay,
So,
all right.
yes, so, but we can, but you're new to us, so we can make that vote for you.
So do I hear a motion to make town administrator Haley Bolton the ADA coordinator?
Yes. So moved.
Second,
Okay, any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Thank you, Sonia.
start the run.
Karen,
I think that'll be really handy. You know, we're,
Don't, sometimes it's a little meeting.
yeah, I can just rubber stamp it through. But no, I think that'll definitely be in particular in this one, if we're talking about future upgrades. One thing I noticed when I was at the senior lunch today is that when people are talking, like I'm hard of hearing in this ear, but even I, like, you can't hear one another speak, and it's
Yeah.
certainly true in this one. you know,
Yeah, it's because there's no, there's nothing to grab,
Absorb
there's
it,
no
yeah.
fabric, there's no
So
rug,
speaking of
there's
the
no.
grant, not to change, so what about that grant that they opened?
You can just step over
That's still
that.
in place, yeah, I think,
Good,
I should follow up with her on that. I'm not sure if she was taking the lead.
no, she wants us.
She wants, she's money, she's getting the money. That's-
Yeah,
that's-
she got us the
I
money,
think they'll
but
overlap nicely, so whatever last doesn't.
Yeah,
the next
yeah.
one could,
I'll
or
connect
vice
with her.
versa, yeah.
Yes, I think, yeah, we don't make sure we don't drop, I think it's $15,000
yes,
bucks.
it was.
But that would help a lot fixing this.
But it was only for certain things.
Things, yeah.
It
Yeah,
wasn't for,
That's true, you're right,
improvements.
you're
We
right.
had the $10,000 on the time, yeah, warrant.
Yeah, I know
But
that.
it helps with the techie stuff, it helps.
Right.
Yeah,
yeah, which is huge. and
It is.
expensive.
Yeah.
yeah,
No, it is, yeah,
and fun.
and fun.
So we talked about it, I'm waiting, tomorrow about the PFAS, so hopefully we'll have some good-ish news to share. I'm optimistic from what I heard from them that there could be some incentive drugs there. We are mailing the documents for the home rule petition, so that's all set, that'll get started, where it needs to go in the House. And then my last thing is I would love to, and I don't know the person's name, who's the chair of the personnel board? But I'd really like to
Pat,
Pat,
who is
okay.
traveling right now, she's traveling.
Okay, because I would love to get on your agenda and just kind of talk about, and I could even share with you what I've done so far for.
Well, I had sent it earlier, and I don't know if you got the first half of I sent it again today, it just circled back to it. I sent multiple emails and I attached the wrong subject to that, my apologies.
Sorry.
This is why I shouldn't be doing stuff at 11 o'clock at night, anyway, so, yeah, you certainly can share, I hadn't given anything to them yet, because I didn't know when our next meeting was, and if Peg was ready for it. I do know there's a couple other things on there needs to be a custodial job description for the library. Because it currently is not in, it's a significant, Gabe had set it up, I think with Peg, it's a significant add of hours. So it lives as 2 job descriptions, so, yeah, I can explain more, I can give you a call tomorrow about that. And then, there was one other thing we had to do for that, and I don't remember what it was. It was a job description, but maybe it was the assessor one, and we just did that one, so. I'll have to look at my notes.
What's your sense of new personnel of the handbook in general?
That's what we were just.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, the first half I did what I had done, and I added in the old language, so there was a comparison between the two.
Okay.
And then the second half I should have all sent to you.
I have a draft of a whole book, so we could slice or.
We'll wanna make sure whatever
Whatever.
things are in for benefits in the old have to go into the new
Yes.
one, we can't change those unless there's a vote.
But I don't,
Yeah.
but I included some policies on like complaint resolution and, you know, progressive
We
discipline
hadn't
and
had any of
like
that.
evaluations. So just kind of, and I just pulled a bunch of like new, you know, like there's some new act that allows people who have children, like if you have to flex your time to drop your kid off at daycare, that's allowed now by the state.
One thing we didn't have also was a domestic violence, a sexual harassment, and there's 5 or 6 other ones that we had.
They were all adopted as separate policies.
But we didn't
right?
even have what, we didn't have. a domestic
Yeah,
violence.
no, but that is included, so
But we
I,
have to
yeah,
have
yeah,
those now.
so I've gotten that.
But they have to be also distributed to each employee, you can't,
Mhm.
you can't say, please see your department head for
No.
the sexual harassment policy, please see your department head for that.
But that could be a good way to get most of the staff in one place and talk about it. I would definitely wanna. Well, I would recommend that we share it with the.
Once we get,
employees
yeah,
of
get a
this-
good
Oh, yeah.
draft going, yeah.
And then, of course, do like a acknowledgement sheet.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I'm at. This is almost a full month, so,
So, yeah.
yeah, I'm still here. I enjoy it. It's really not that bad. I think, you know, I think a lot of the issues are solvable, I think, for the most part, from what I've seen, you know, communication can be fixed. Buildings can be repaired, you know, but those things they're not quick fixes. So it'll probably take a little bit of time before you see real results. But yeah, I'm definitely keeping busy.
And in terms of just like the broader goals, I know you're working on that. Do you wanna,
Yeah, I can ask us upon that. So I see us really needing to get more modernized. You know, it is what it is, but, you know, there's some practices right now around accounts that kind of worry me and security. Those things should be addressed pretty quickly.
I think you highlighted one thing.
So there's that, you know, and just really making sure, what I said in the meeting today is I'm not really looking to change a whole lot right now. I want to just know how things have been. I don't think you can really do anything different unless you appreciate where you're at now. So I've been making it a point to say, what is your department's policy on this? Do you even have a policy on that? So that they know I'm invested in hearing what works and what doesn't work for them. And then, you know, you've got your buildings, I think you had identified buildings.
yeah, I think I was more setting up goals for you,
Okay.
in that document, and then to say, you know, what are the tasks? And they were sort of like larger,
Yeah, the
goals,
theme.
so.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I mean, technology is a theme, I think your grants, financial management, so making sure that we can maximize every dollar. Those are the big ones, there's lots of tasks that fall underneath that. I haven't gotten a chance to work on that document today.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. I think, I just want to make sure we don't lose it because, you know, I think there's some really important stuff that you're already kind of working on. You know, one example is getting all the department heads and getting people to do goals and having performance reviews and all that stuff that, you know, just fell by the wayside that is naturally gonna come from you.
And I'm trying to keep organized with it as best I can. I have a lot of Google Docs right now.
Yeah.
That are going, so it's
Yeah.
a little hard to keep track of, but also one thing I said about goals with them is, you know, I understand that there are budget realities in town. But I've encouraged them to think about, you know, what are the things that you want that we can't consistently fund? You know, if you have a way to say, hey, you know, we've been thinking about, maybe we want to expand the service, or we want to adapt something, we want to implement a new policy, but there's no funding for it. It's helpful for people to know that, hey, this has been on the back burner for maybe
Right.
5 years.
Right.
And, you know, how can we come up with a plan to slowly fund this?
Yeah.
So I told them to do that, and I told them I'm gonna be giving them monthly reports to, you know, I'm gonna sit down with each department head individually to identify what makes sense on that report. It's always gonna be the same. But, you know, I've said to them, I'm really good at creating graphic images, communicating that way. And if you give me the information, I can set it up.
Right.
But I need that information from you, because otherwise I can't advocate for you, I can't have your back if I don't know what am I supposed to be saying, what's accurate about what's going on. That we talked about today, and yeah, it's helpful.
All right, so we'll set up another time, when you, a little bit more time, but,
Speaking of reading.
yeah.
I
well,
do
it's
have a
just
schedule,
lot.
I think, but the full first week.
Yeah. You go ahead.
Yeah, for next week, we have a meeting that we were gonna use as our time rather than, and
Can
then,
I make a suggestion? I think it might be helpful to do a couple things, and maybe on the 13th, use that as both a strategy session, and there's something else that came up tonight that I thought, if you want to talk more about the warrant.
Well, yeah, so we should go through the warrant.
maybe then too, or.
Yeah,
I
don't
think
you
if you
think
do
so?
that-
Yes, because I know Brennan really wanted to get it to Donna, so he had said the 12th, but we're not gonna be ready. So the 13th, we would meet and do a strategy session
And then
and finalize the warrant.
yeah, I think that was,
Yeah.
and we had it on for, 4:30, which is still fine with me. I don't know if you guys wanted it or. I can
So the
But
13th is
Tuesday, I have
Tuesday.
flexibility on Tuesday.
Okay. That
So
seems fine for me. Eric, does that
That,
work?
that's
for
an
you?
open meeting, that's an open meeting, right?
It would start that way for the
And that's
discussion on the
executive
warrant.
session on the strategy.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine, as far as I know, that works for me.
So 4:30 is okay?
Yep.
Yeah, because then we have enough time to get to Gail, enough time to post it.
And then
Oh, Donna's not available till 6 o'clock. So could we do 5 and then, she can join us at 6?
That's the 13th, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
5 o'clock.
Okay.
Well, we can get pizza or something. So 5 PM, would you send out all right, so maybe I'll just put it in my calendar right now, it's just, okay.
if I don't do it right, then I always forget and it
Yeah.
always surprises me. And I don't need any more surprises. I think right now. so.
No.
I
that's
missed
the-
my limit for the year. And then, we're not even near summer yet.
Okay. All right, so 5 o'clock and then.
Will she be, well, we'll have the Zoom set up, so. I
And
guess-
then, are we doing,
So then we also have to do another one for the results of the strategy session.
right?
So 13th is Tuesday.
Yeah, I think the 14th was tossed out.
Well, if
Wait
you
a second, I
wanted
have
to
something
do
on the 14th.
a second meeting that same week? Is that what we're?
Or we can do
talking
it the next week, I was packing, but it looks like we have an emergency management meeting.
We do?
I don't know if this is left over from another time.
Yeah.
Oh my God, no, we can't.
We
Okay,
just,
no, never mind, it's not, it
Don't
was
scare me.
brought over.
Don't scare
That
me.
was mine, I made it reoccurring.
well, we do it, so that's Tuesday, so.
We do have emergency management on the 19th. We already meet on the 20th. Oops.
So 5:20 is regular select.
Do we want to do the 21st, or do we want to add another one more week next time?
And this would be to discuss what we talked about.
The results of two, yeah.
So, yeah, I think we want, but I think we want to kind of move along with that deal. So that's a Tuesday.
All right, and, yeah. At some point, we have to talk about outstanding complaints that we have not scheduled, executive sessions for. So. We'll put that on the agenda for next. Or,
With the person or?
no,
Yeah.
on the 20th, at the regular select board meeting.
Okay, you won't, okay, not at the 13th.
There are a few of them.
The other thing we did pick was another date for the results of
The strategy,
yeah.
what does it say?
Do we want to do that the same week or do it the next week?
We should probably, the same week.
So next week, like the 14th, 15th. I know you're not here this evening,
Or the same week of the 20th.
or the week of the 20th.
Yeah, let's say we.
Oh, the week of the 20th, okay,
Let's do it the week of the 20th,
all right.
okay,
I have time on Wednesday.
the 20th,
21st, sorry.
21st.
Yeah,
That's enough time, okay. All right, let's do the 21st at 4 o'clock.
at 4 o'clock. Okay.
It's full, okay,
Yeah, 4 works, or I can be adjustable in my schedule, so
okay.
I know it early enough if you wanted it before 4.
Yeah, that's
4 o'clock is good.
Gives you guys enough time to talk about, every layer.
Yeah, and give, yeah.
okay. You all set?
I think so.
All right, do I hear any motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Thank you for the eye.
Stop your eye.
Carol, aye.
I'm already looking at my phone.
Yeah. So let me just,
At least there was a voice this time to
I
answer.
got a little supper.
Last time it was a little awkward.
thank you, I'm good. So we're gonna start this at 5 o'clock. And then I'm just taking the 14th off of here. This one. Right? We have
Yeah.
nothing on the 14th.
No.
No,
Thank God.
we've done quite a.
Yeah.
When I first.
I think our record is
Oh, just
meetings
an
in
hour a
4
week.
weeks.
There's no one meeting every other week, that's not. Really? I'm only off by about.
Nothing to worry about. We need to get rid of books, now I can't see what that is.
Look at that, I walked up. They're nice, so.
They are nice. Yeah.
I'm impressed.